On this week's episode of Ride the Lightning, the Tesla unofficial podcast, Tesla unveiled its long-awaited Robotaxi, aka the Cybercab. But that wasn't all. I was lucky enough to be there, so I'll give you the highlights from the presentation and my analysis, along with my impressions of riding in the Robotaxi, checking out the Robovan, dancing with Optimus robots, smacking a Cybertruck door with a heavy hammer, and more. What's happening, friends? Ryan McCaffrey joining you from back in San Francisco. I returned home today after being in Burbank yesterday for the Robotaxi event. I've got Daisy the Boxer to my left, mine of the future service dog at my feet here, both snoozing away. I have been scrambling to get this podcast ready to go, but I'm glad I got to sleep on it and I didn't have to live stream this immediately because there have been a couple of interesting facts that have come out after the event, sort of clarifying information. There is so much to get to on this week's podcast. You knew it was going to be a good one. You knew it was going to be fun one way or the other. And I definitely hope this episode's going to be fun. I had fun preparing it, and I'm going to have fun recording it right now. So I do want to start with a couple of housekeeping notes before I get to the actual Robotaxi event. And starting with this, that may be of use to some of you in the immediate future, and that is a public service announcement to check your email inboxes even if you placed a Cybertruck reservation well after the initial unveiling back in November of 2019. Why do I say that? Well, my reservation from August 29th, 2022, so a 2-year-old reservation, rather than a 5-year-old reservation like the day one folks. Just for a little context, that reservation number begins with 11777. Got invited to order a general production Cybertruck just this afternoon, here on Friday, October 11th. Needless to say, I was extremely surprised to see that email land in my inbox. Although, taking a look at it when I logged into my account, FSD is showing at the regular $8,000 price on this one, not the $7,000 price, which is certainly not a surprise because that reservation from just 2 years ago clearly wasn't an early reservation, and it didn't have the option to lock in the $7,000 FSD price at the time. So I have been trying to puzzle this out all afternoon since I got this email. If Tesla just invited half of the 2 million reservation holders or more, aren't they going to get bombarded with an absolutely insane number of orders for the dual motor and also some Cyberbeast orders at the regular price, $80,000 or $100,000? And I'll tell you, the delivery window, it's not like it's saying, well, you're going to have to wait 6 months and we're just going to forecast out our production for 6 months. No. My delivery window on that reservation shows as immediate. It says October, November. So did they open this up super wide, or did someone from Tesla that met me at the event last night just slyly push me and me alone the option to configure? I don't know. I can't imagine I'm getting special treatment, but I'm just a little confused. So I promise this isn't an attempt to brag if I somehow did get special treatment. I'm wondering if any of you out there that have non-day one, something later than day one of your Cybertruck reservation, if you are now able to configure a general production Cybertruck as well. So wanted to open with that because that was not something I expected to be talking about or something I expected to have available to me. I still can't order it. Like I told you last week, I'm still working on my down payment, but that was nevertheless quite the surprise in my email box. Okay, on to more serious matters for this week that can help all of you rather than potentially just me. And let's start right here. Tesla is introducing 0% financing for up to 72 months on Model 3 and Model Y if you purchase FSD supervised with the car, which of course is $8,000. Tesla notes for well-qualified buyers. I'm not sure how Tesla defines that, but for well-qualified buyers, 0% financing on Model 3 and Model Y. The fine print from Tesla reads as follows: 0% APR for terms up to 72 months with a minimum down payment of 15%, and then in parentheses, $7,500 federal tax credit will be applied if eligible. So I suspect this is probably the big incentive for the quarter, or at least the biggest incentive for the quarter. I mean, we likely, I feel like at this point, I mean, I know it's still only the first couple of weeks of the quarter as I record this, but the 0% thing, that's pretty significant. My gut says we probably won't get any specific awesome incentives on the Model X or on the Model 3 Performance like we did last quarter, but I sure hope I'm wrong. Hopefully in the next week or two, more of either those same great incentives from Q3 return or Tesla ups the ante with something else. We'll see. Now, because all of you know that I've been considering a new Model 3 Performance to replace my wife's old Mini Cooper, in addition to the Cybertruck. It's kind of been a heart versus brain conversation going on in my body of heart says Cybertruck, brain says take the cheaper car that you know you'll also love in the form of the new Model 3 Performance. So I ran some quick numbers on the Tesla Design Studio using the payment calculator that's on there on a Model 3 Performance in ultra red with white interior, which is of course exactly how I would configure it. And with the 0% financing, it came out to almost the exact same monthly payment as that same configuration did last quarter when I ran the numbers then with that free paint color option with FSD purchase that would thus allow that car to qualify for the $7,500 tax credit. So buying that configuration today, at least as of when I record this, means it would not qualify for the $7,500 tax credit, but the 0% kind of offsets it effectively. So in terms of the Model 3 Performance, in order to really maximize this new offer, you'd still have to get a stealth gray paint color. And then fortunately, you could get white interior or black, since on the Model 3 Performance and the Model 3 Performance alone, Tesla is not charging extra for white interior. You can simply choose either black interior or white. So that is a very interesting incentive. 0%, I think they'll get a lot of bites on that. And at odds with that, but still nevertheless a very interesting incentive. Again, we thought this was over. It is not. Tesla is keeping FSD transfer going for at least one more quarter. So I think this is pretty notable for a couple of reasons. One, back at the annual shareholder meeting in May, during the Q&A session with Elon after his presentation, one shareholder got up and asked Elon very nicely if Tesla would be willing to do FSD transfer one more time, meaning in Q3 because it was running in Q2. And Elon said, yeah, I'm paraphrasing here, he said, yep, one more quarter and that's it. So the fact that Tesla has brought it back again for a second quarter after they said they were done, that statement to me suggests that Tesla is willing to pull every demand lever they can in order to get to their 1.8 million vehicle delivery goal for 2024. And then the second thing that I think is notable here, and I acknowledge that I may very well be looking too far into this, but at this point, FSD transfer has now been running for quite a while. I guess not technically consecutively, because there have been, like, for the first 10 days of this quarter, it wasn't running. But for all intents and purposes, FSD transfer has now been running for, I believe it's a year or maybe even a year and a quarter right now. So that gets me wondering, well, is Tesla either on purpose or on accident conditioning customers to simply expect FSD transfer to be available? And if so, if that happens, if they are conditioning us to expect it on purpose or on accident, then Tesla might almost have to make it permanent. Now, of course, they don't have to make it permanent, but if they keep doing it, it's going to become an expectation, and if then they take it away, there's going to be an uproar, and quite frankly, understandably so. Because, I mean, again, I might be making a mountain out of a molehill here, but I think permanent FSD transfer is in play with this move of extending it again after the CEO of the company had said one more, and that's it, and now we're getting a second one after that one more. As I've said before, I absolutely think it should be permanent if you pay the full purchase price for it versus just subscribing month to month for $100 a month. I mean, you're investing a lot in it, and you should be able to keep it if, God forbid, your car gets totaled through no fault of your own. If some driver plows into your car and your Tesla, being the safest car on the road, keeps you safe, number one, but the car's totaled, then guess what? You should be able to transfer that FSD over to a new car because you didn't do anything wrong. And neither did your Tesla. It protected you. It did what it was supposed to do, but Tesla should keep you on that FSD program because it's safer. Tesla keeps telling us over and over, it's safer with FSD turned on. Well, great, then my car just saved me, again, in this hypothetical situation where your car gets hit and totaled. You shouldn't have to pay $8,000 for it again. I know I'm far from alone on this. In fact, I imagine I'm in the majority on this, but I do hope that Tesla is going to basically make this permanent, whether they intend to or not. And really, even if we're not talking about a worst case scenario, even if we're talking about a far more preferable scenario of just wanting to upgrade your car, well, making FSD transfer, I know I've said this before, but making it permanent is a very significant and very easy way for Tesla to maintain customer loyalty, particularly as, not to say, I'm not saying anything bad about Tesla's cars at all, but more and more good non-Tesla options are hitting the market. So I'm not saying people are going to walk away from the brand, but if you just make FSD transfer a permanent thing, attach it to your account instead of to the car, that's going to keep people driving Teslas. It's going to keep them in the ecosystem, and it's going to prevent them from probably even flirting with other car companies. So again, fingers crossed that FSD transfer becomes permanent, whether it's on purpose on Tesla's part or just by accident. By the way, if you'd like to give back to the podcast, you enjoy the show, you want to support it, join me on Patreon at patreon.com/Tesla Podcast for early access to each week's episode, ad-free episodes, and if you join at that $10 per month tier or higher, the lightning round weekly bonus mini episodes. This one, which obviously I recorded before the Robotaxi event, was my last-minute Robotaxi event predictions. So now you can go back on it with the knowledge. You can listen to it and see what I got right and what I got wrong. And I did get at least one thing that I can remember off the top of my head right. So anyway, check that out. I'd love it. I'd be humbled and grateful if you saw fit to show me some support on Patreon. Patreon.com/Tesla Podcast. Okay, here we go. Let's talk about this week's big product unveilings, plural. Yes, plural. So, the basics. Obviously, we're talking about the Cybercab here, which is also called the Robotaxi. In fact, Robotaxi is in the graffiti font the Cybertruck uses and is also on the stainless steel drink vessel that I bought at the merch church at the event. It was a whole, I'll tell you about the event itself later, but there was this whole Warner Brothers backlot space, and one of the buildings on the lot is a church that I'm sure has appeared in a million movies and TV shows. And for Tesla's purposes at the event, they had it set up as a merch stand. So they had a little sign that said the Merch Church, which I thought was just a funny play on words. But I bought a drink vessel, and yeah, it's using the Cyber font from the Cybertruck in saying Robotaxi, but they still call it the Cybercab as well. So it seems like they're going to call it either one. You can use them interchangeably. Anyway, I have a few clips from Elon's 19-minute presentation. We heard a number of the same things we've heard Elon say before here. For instance, phrases like age of abundance when talking about Robotaxi and Optimus, and some analogies that we've heard him make before, like he gave the manual elevator operator analogy to autonomous driving that we've heard a bunch of times before. But still plenty of good stuff in the presentation. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clips for you, averaging about a minute each. So it's about 5 minutes worth of clips. I'll talk about each one, and then I'll get into much more about this event. So first clip, here is Elon after he first rolled up in the Robotaxi.
As you can see, I just arrived in the Robotaxi, the Cybercab. And there's 20 more where that came from. So they've been traveling. There's no people in them, as you can see. The car's just going by with no people. And we have 50 fully autonomous cars here tonight. So you'll see Model Ys and the Cybercab, all driverless. You'll be able to take a ride in the Cybercab. There's no steering wheel or pedals. So I hope this goes well. We'll find out.
So unfortunately, we did not get a range figure given for the Cybercab. I'd expect it to be around 250 miles. I could see it potentially being less. It is a small vehicle, and it's not really meant for road tripping, which I'll explain more. At least this is my interpretation. This is not Tesla saying this. I'll talk more about that, about the road trip piece of it a little later, but I'm thinking 200 to 250 miles. Also, the body of the Cybercab, I'm assuming by now you've looked at a picture or watched a video, or maybe you watched the presentation, which is another reason that I'm just going to give you these 5 clips because you may have already watched it. The body of the Cybercab, despite being given the cyber name, is not HFS. It is not hard freaking stainless steel, or in fact, any stainless steel at all, which, I mean, you take a look at it and you can see that it's got curves that the Cybertruck, we're told, can't have because of how hard the metal is. And so they can only bend it. They can't curve it. But the Robotaxi has curves. And the following day, today, Friday, as I record this, the Robotaxi lead engineer at Tesla, whose name is Eric, I don't know his last name because he doesn't put it on his X profile, so that's okay. But the lead engineer on the project, Eric, confirmed on X saying, quote, "Small correction. Exterior panels are not stainless steel. The mass and cost of stainless steel is undesirable on our high-efficiency Robotaxi," end quote. And thus, the Cyber here is more in name and style rather than in function. And I'll be honest, I really thought it would be HFS. I really, really thought I did I really thought it would because to me, it would make sense to have an urban Robotaxi that doesn't have to be painted, and thus that paint doesn't have to be cared for. You don't have to worry about it getting scratched. It can take a beating in the city, sometimes literally, depending on the city. from another, whether it's from another car or a bicycle or whatever, a little moped, motorcycle. I mean, you hope not, but that stuff happens. So I really thought it would be HFS, and certainly it would be ding resistant, scratch resistant. But I suppose, I mean, certainly Eric is not wrong, and he knows better than I do that stainless would add weight. What I can tell you with authority and experience is that my original dream car that I was so lucky to own for a long time, the DeLorean, aka the first ever stainless steel mass-produced car until the Cybertruck came along as the second. With the DeLorean, they solved that by making the stainless steel body panels pretty thin, and they had a fiberglass underbody for a support structure of the car. But again, here, in the case of the Robotaxi, the Cyber seems to be a design language. I'll tell you, the front light bar, which I think you'd agree if you have either, again, seen pictures or watched the live stream, watched the presentation, the front light bar on the Robotaxi is very Cybertruck. It's very, very, very Cybertrucky, for sure. And the rear of the Robotaxi has a very similar thin red light bar stretching across the entire width of the back of the car, similar to the Cybertruck as well. Now, as for the price, well, it's going to be under $30,000, Elon says. And yes, he says that we'll be able to buy them, so they won't just be operated by Tesla themselves or by fleet managers, which was a question, a legitimate question that I had and plenty of people had coming into this event. So it's cool to know that you'll be able to buy one for yourself if you want one for your family and or to put into the Tesla network to go to work for you when you're not using it. So now the question becomes, what's the next step? What is the timeline? Here's Elon.
We do expect actually to start fully autonomous, unsupervised FSD in Texas and California next year. And that's with the Model 3 and Model Y. And then we expect to be in production with the Cybercab, which is really highly optimized for autonomous transport in probably, well, I tend to be a little optimistic with timeframes, but in 2026. So, yeah, before 2027, let me put it that way. And we'll make this vehicle in very high volume, and but well before that, you will experience a robotic taxi via the Model 3 and Model Y program, and Model S and X too. But your 3 and Y will achieve unsupervised full self-driving with permission in wherever regulators essentially approve it in the U.S. and then to follow in outside the U.S. So, and Cybertruck too, yes, of course. Sorry, I don't want to forget. Yes. All our cars are basically all cars that we make.
So that means that this thing is a bare minimum of 2 years away. But if we're being realistic here, Tesla's history suggests it's probably further out than that. Hopefully not. But again, if we're looking at history, we're being realistic, it's probably more than 2 years out. But it will happen, unquestionably. Of course, it will happen. It is happening, but it's probably going to take some time. Now, next question. How will it charge?
Something we're also doing is, and it's really high time we did this, is inductive charging. So the Robotaxi has no plug. It just goes over the inductive charger and charges. So, yeah. It's kind of how it should be.
So if it can only charge wirelessly, that means a wireless charging pad has to come with the car, right? I mean, I sure hope so. But the bigger question for me is, what about public charging? There is currently, to the best of my knowledge, effectively zero infrastructure for inductive charging for EVs in the United States. So will our homes be the only place that you can charge these? And if so, what does that mean for people that live in cities, aka the place where these are probably going to be the most useful and very sought after, where not everybody has a garage or a parking spot or a driveway? So how is that going to work? And now, coming back to the question that I posed a few minutes ago, can I not take the Robotaxi on a road trip? I mean, I understand that it's probably meant for the urban/around town transport, but is a road trip option just going to be completely off the table? I mean, that would be a shame if that is indeed the case, because how cool would it be to just go to sleep, like leave at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. or something, and just be able to go to sleep while it takes me overnight to my parents' house in the Phoenix area. Because it's in my Model 3 right now with a officially 310 mile range, but in practice, not really. It takes me, I think I'm about 4 or 5 charging stops to get to Phoenix. And so in a Robotaxi, if it's got similar or less range, so let's just add another stop in there. So Robotaxi, if I can get in that thing, tell it to go to Phoenix, and go to sleep, and I wake up when I get there, because again, driving my car now, it's about 14 hours or so, 12 to 14 hours, 12 on the absolute low end, more like 13 or 14. So yeah, if I can just head out, go to sleep, and wake up and almost be there, or leave, while I'm still awake, and then go to sleep and wake up when I get there in the morning, how cool would that be? I mean, especially if there was infrastructure for the wireless charging, where I wouldn't even have to wake up to get out of the Robotaxi to plug it in. Of course, because you can't plug it in. So it could just park itself over a wireless charger at a supercharger. But that's only if such infrastructure existed, which Tesla didn't say anything about at this point. And just thinking about it logically, I'm guessing it's not going to be a thing that we see on interstate superchargers anytime soon, at least not for quite a while. All right, let's move on to the next question that we have about the Cybercab. What about the computing power that will be inside it that's powering this entire experience?
Now, we are going to actually overspec the computer for the Cybercab. So our AI5 computer will be somewhat overspec'd. And because I think there's actually also an opportunity, sort of like in Amazon Web Services, where if the car is driving for 50 hours a week, there's still over 100 hours left. And there's a potential there to have a massive amount of distributed inference compute, where if you've got, like, say, a fleet of 100 million vehicles and a kilowatt of efficient inference compute, you have 100 gigawatts of compute, which is really quite substantial. And if it's there, you might as well use it. So, so that I think will make sense.
Well, AI5 certainly makes a ton of sense. Elon had already told us on one or maybe even 2 fairly recent earnings calls that the AI5 computer was tracking towards showing up in cars starting late next year, late 2025. Also, during the presentation, Elon specifically said any car we sell today will be capable of unsupervised FSD. Naturally, I can't help but wonder, as the owner of a admittedly aging now Hardware 3 car, does that leave Hardware 3 cars out of this? Will my 2018 Model 3 only ever be capable of supervised FSD? If that's the case, well, guess what? That's a huge reason to keep FSD transfer permanent, as I was talking about earlier in the podcast. It might, on the one hand, keeping FSD transfer permanent, at least for people that own Hardware 2 and Hardware 3 cars, might prevent a potentially massive class action lawsuit from people who bought Hardware 2 and Hardware 3 cars, that Tesla had promised on their website was capable of delivering full self-driving. So we'll see what happens. But I've got one more clip before I get to start telling you about my experience at the event. This last clip is, well, just say hello to the one more thing of this event, aka the Robovan, aka the Robovan.
So there's a lot of opportunity to create green space in the cities that we live in. So I think that would be quite fantastic. Oh, and also, what happens if you need a vehicle that is bigger than a Model Y? The Robovan. The Robovan is we're going to make this, and it's going to look like that. Now, can you imagine going down the streets and you see this coming towards you? That'd be sick. So this can carry up to 20 people, and it can also transport goods. So you can configure it for goods transport within a city, or transport of up to 20 people at a time. So this is gonna, the Robovan is what's gonna solve for high density. So if you want to take a sports team somewhere, or you're looking to really get the cost of travel down to, I don't know, 5-10 cents a mile, then you can use the Robovan. Some people call it the Robovan, but so yeah.
So there was indeed a one more thing, and this was it. And by the way, Robovan is pretty funny. I do get a kick out of that. And the sound you heard in that clip that I played was the crowd getting riled up as Elon was going on with the presentation, and then as the surprise, the Robovan rolled out down the street and came around the corner in front of the crowd. So it seats 20 people at a maximum, and in my humble opinion, looks straight out of Westworld. And when I looked at this thing and Elon starts talking about it, it jogged a memory for me of the Tesla Secret Master Plan Part 2, which I went back and looked up. And it turns out that the Robovan is basically straight out of Secret Master Plan Part 2 from July of 2016, so more than 8 years ago. Here's a little excerpt from Secret Master Plan Part 2, quote, "With the advent of autonomy, it will probably make sense to shrink the size of buses and transition the role of bus driver to that of fleet manager. Traffic congestion would improve due to increased passenger density by eliminating the center aisle and putting seats where there are currently entryways and matching acceleration and braking to other vehicles, thus avoiding the inertial impedance to smooth traffic flow of traditional heavy buses. It would also take people all the way to their destination. Fixed summon buttons at existing bus stops would serve those who don't have a phone. Design accommodates wheelchairs, strollers, and bikes." And just as a reminder, the secret master plans were all written by Elon, so just hear that in his voice. So that's, sure enough, straight out of the 8-year-old Master Plan Part 2 for this. Now, I'm probably wrong here, but for some reason, my gut says when that Robovan rolled out, and then I got a close-up look at it, maybe because it just seems even more out there than the Robotaxi itself does, for some reason my gut says that the Robovan is going to come well after the Robotaxi. Well after. It also doesn't really seem like something that regular people would buy for individual or family use, unlike the Cybercab. I mean, the van seems like kind of a fleet-only thing. So, I mean, granted, Tesla, I will say this, Tesla on their X account tonight, they did post a clip of Elon talking about the the Robovan. And they said, as soon as I find it, seats 20 and can be adapted to commercial or personal use, school bus, RV, cargo. So the RV piece might interest some of you out there, because I know a lot of you would really love an EV RV, a Tesla RV. So would you have to have it like a full conversion kind of thing done on it? Will Tesla offer a conversion themselves at a service center, or so still more questions than answers there, but it does seem like for the most part, the Robovan is not going to be a thing that individual families, individual people are buying. Maybe it's just going to be a fleet thing. I mean, is it going to be municipalities that Tesla's going to be trying to sell this to? And if not, who is buying them? Like how are these actually going to be purchased and be implemented into society in practice? So lots of unanswered questions on that product specifically, but that was the one more thing extra surprise. Side note, by the way, I'm not sure if you could really get a good sense of it on the live stream, but from the crowd, people kept yelling out questions during the presentation as Elon's trying to talk. Unfortunately, this is not a new thing at Tesla events. I've probably complained about it before, and maybe I'm an old man yelling at a cloud, but if I'm being honest, I find it extremely disrespectful. Elon does a great job of rolling with it, to his credit, and really, maybe he doesn't really mind at all. Maybe I'm the only one that's annoyed by it, but because he will actually respond to those people, which I suppose naturally only encourages more people to yell out questions, which it did at this. Because the first thing yelled out was, "Can we buy one?" And he says, "Yes, you'll be able to buy one." And then more people just start yelling things out. And it's come on, like, let the guy give his presentation. If we were in a boardroom, would you just start yelling out questions in the middle of a colleague's presentation? No, you probably wouldn't. Anyway, enough of me. I did. I can't help it. I just was bothered by that, and it's a persistent thing at Tesla events, and it seemed especially egregious at this one. But let's get back on topic. I want to tell you now about the event, because it was definitely a unique experience. It was very unlike any other Tesla event I've had the extreme privilege and pleasure of attending. And I will start with what you're all no doubt most curious about, which is my test ride in the Robotaxi. So I waited, by the way, it was a long wait. It was probably, I think it was about a 45-minute wait. They had multiple places that you could get in line to get a ride for it, because the whole thing was set up as like a fake little city, fake little town with different neighborhoods, if you will. And so the idea was that the cars were just doing these loops around, and you'd get in at one point and it would drop you off at another, and then other people would get in and it would go back to where you started and drop them off, and et cetera, et cetera. So it was a pretty big space, and they had all sorts of neat signage up on the facades of the buildings in this back lot, to make it a fictional place. In fact, I'm going to pull up on my phone real quick some of them, because they were all Tesla themed. Like, here's a couple I took pictures of. There was a furniture store, and I'm using air quotes here, called House of Franz-tastic Furnishings, with a sign that said prices starting at $69.42 with an extra zero, and then 69% off sale in the window. There were a million of them. There were so many good little. There was the Ludicrous Lounge Cafe and Bistro, where they had an actual human live musician out there playing, which was pretty cool. So, and then I mentioned the merch church earlier that sold a Robotaxi hat, a We Robot t-shirt, the Robotaxi drink, stainless steel drink vessel that I bought that I mentioned earlier. And then a few things. They had a Optimus poster, Robotaxi poster, Robovan poster, and then a few other items that are already available on the shop.tesla.com website right now. But yeah, it was a pretty... They definitely get a lot of points for theming. Like, they really went the full 9 yards with the theming. And so I waited in line about 45 minutes to get my ride. And first of all, I'm just grateful that I got one, because the whole event ran late because, unfortunately, there was Tesla events always start late. I mean, when it said 7 p.m., I knew, like, okay, well, that's like a minimum of 7:15, probably 7:20, maybe even 7:30, which is fine. I don't have anywhere else to be. But it went much, much later than that. It was almost an hour late, quote unquote late, because there were, unfortunately, 2 people needing urgent medical assistance in the crowd. One of them, a friend texted me about from further back. I was closer to the front, and there was a gentleman 6 feet to my right that had a situation and needed paramedic assistance. And thankfully, after a short time, he was up. People, as soon as he got up, everybody applauded. He waved to acknowledge people that he's okay. And I don't know if he ended up leaving with the paramedics but presumably he is okay. And I hope the other person further back in the crowd that I could not see was doing all right as well. So if you were tuning in online and you were wondering, my goodness, why is this so late? Well, it was the typical Tesla tardiness plus an unfortunate, legitimate medical situation for someone in the crowd. And of course, good on Tesla for not just starting as scheduled when they knew that there was somebody having a medical situation in the crowd. So that was that. Anyway, all that is to kind of inform you if you were curious about why it took so long to start. But also, everybody's badge that they were handed when they came in had, as they've done it in previous events, had a boarding group with a time on the back, a window of time. And so all of that got thrown off. I was in the second to last group of the evening, which I think my original time was supposed to be 9:30 to 10 p.m. I think that's about right. I think it's what it was. I have it here somewhere, but it's not right in front of me. But anyway, so I get in line. I think I got in line at 9:45, if I remember correctly, because everything got pushed back since the event started super late. But I just figured, okay, I can't imagine they're going to throw me out of line here. I'm just going to get in line. I'd gone to the merch church. I bought my Robotaxi stainless steel drink vessel. I'd wandered around, and I'll tell you about the wandering around bit because there was some stuff to see. But I got in line. It was about a 45, maybe even hour-long wait. But I got a ride, and I'm just grateful that I did because not everybody did. The curfew for the event was midnight. That's when they shut it down and tossed everybody out. So I was very grateful that I did get a ride because it was 10:45 by the time when I got in the cab, when I got in the Cybercab. And just before I did, a Tesla person had come around saying, last rides are at 11:45. So I knew I had plenty of cushion. I was going to make it, but I'm just glad I got one because it would have been a disappointment certainly to have spent the money to come all that way and to ended up not getting a ride in the Cybercab. They were also offering rides in a completely driverless Model Y. They had those as well, but very few people in the line were opting for that, which you can understand. I mean, I want to be in the Cybercab. That's what I'm here for, and most people had the same thought. And thankfully, in my line, they weren't making you get in the Model Y, even if it pulled up the driverless Y. I kept hearing from many other people that in other lines they were telling people get in the Model Y or go to the back of the line. So that that's not cool in my humble opinion. And I'm really glad that the people running the line I was in did not implement such a policy. But the Cybercab itself, so love the butterfly doors, the powered, automatic butterfly doors. I'm a sucker for cool, unique doors on a car. I owned a DeLorean, so it shouldn't come as a surprise. So really dig the doors. I hop in. First thing I noticed, the two big things that I noticed. One, the seats. They don't really have bolstering like all of our seats do, whether you're driving an SX3Y or Cybertruck. They're kind of just like lounge seats that you'd find in your living room. It's two individual seats. And then there's a center console where presumably you've got a little storage, and there were two cup holders. And then, interestingly, the window switches were down at the bottom sort of base of the center console, not on the doors themselves. Maybe that's a wire. It must be like simplifies I'm sure it simplifies the build somehow. But, the seats are, and they were comfortable. Don't get me wrong. It was a very loungy experience, and I would say that as a compliment. It was comfortable. It was chill. There's a small, subtle LED light strip that runs the length of the blade HVAC that goes, across that, just like the HVAC system in all of our cars, except the LED strip is like integrated right into it. Presumably in the final car, you'll be able to go in and change the color of that if you want, like you can in a Model 3 or in a Cybertruck now. But the seat was a big difference. And then speaking of big, the other obvious thing as soon as you get in the Cybercab is the size of the center touchscreen. It is enormous. From afar, as I was waiting in line watching cab after cab go by and pick people up and drop people off, I was looking at it going, that's got to at least be the Cybertruck 18-inch screen, because the car is much narrower. It's much smaller than the Cybertruck, so there's a little bit of optical illusion going on right there, right? So it's like that's got to at least be the 18-inch screen from the Cybertruck. Getting in it, oh no. It's significantly larger than the Cybertruck's 18-inch screen, to the point where you couldn't have it's not that you couldn't fit a steering wheel in the Robotaxi. It's that as you would be working the steering wheel with your hands and or elbows would be like bumping into, you'd be hitting the giant screen. That's how big the screen is. It takes up a huge chunk of that, of what the dashboard is. But again, it makes sense, right? Because you're not driving, so it's all productivity or entertainment. So they had a little demo thing where you could put on a movie or put on what was the other thing? Oh, video games. Sorry, I blanked out for a second. They had video games, and they had a little map of just showing you where the car was going. And I wasn't really poking around the screen. I rolled the window down, hung my arm out like a cool guy, just because why not? I'm there. I feel pretty cool in that moment. And the route, what's pretty cool about the route is that it passed by a number of fun little bits of Tesla history. So they had like people on cool bicycles riding around. They had some other cars driving by. Like at one point, not when I was in the Cybercab, but when I was in line, the Unplugged Performance, the Irvine Cybertruck police vehicle went by, like with its lights on. But along the test ride route, they had like S's and X's doing a light show. They had a Tesla semi sitting there on the side of the road. And then as I just glance and catch it out of the corner of my eye, right as I'm going by, so I take a look back, they had these still spectacularly beautiful silver Model 3 Alpha prototype that had the absolutely sick silver paint job. Like, if you'd have to see it in person to see how beautiful and deep and brilliant the paint job was on that prototype Model 3, it makes any of the silvers now, the Quicksilver or the Lunar Silver on the SRX, look like Crayola crayon colors. Like it's I don't know how many stages that paint was, or whatever the other sort of hallmarks are of an incredible paint job. But they had that car sitting out. They had the original Model X prototype out, which looks reasonably different than the production Model X. Of all the prototypes, the X prototype might be the most different looking from the production car. Still definitely a resemblance, don't get me wrong, but so there was some really cool stuff to see as you're looking out the window. And I got to ride with Justin, aka Bearded Tesla, my friend, who was on this podcast not long ago. He, of course, along with Raphael, aka Teslatino, they're the two gentlemen that drove up to the Arctic Circle in their Cybertrucks. So I was hanging out with Justin in line, and we did our ride together. If you watched his live stream, I was probably in it, because he was filming from... I sat in what would be the driver's seat in the United States, on the left-hand side. I don't want to be disrespectful to my UK, Australian, Japanese, and New Zealand listeners who are right-hand drive people, but I sat on the left side, what would have been the driver's side in my car, I'll put it that way. And Justin was sitting in what would be the traditional passenger seat. And I want to say one other thing about the butterfly doors, the powered automatic butterfly doors. Very, very easy ingress and egress. Super easy to hop in and out. It just made it really nice to just... the door goes kind of up and forward, where you don't have to worry about hitting your head at all. So that I really liked. So it really was... It was brief, as the test rides at these things always are. It was probably, I'm going to guess, between 60 and 90 seconds, something like that. Here's a hilarious thing that happened. I was filming my ride. I was trying to enjoy it in real life, but I did also want to film it because I wanted to put it on my social channels for those of you that couldn't be there, that might wanted to see what I saw. And at like 90% of the way through the ride, when it's almost over, my phone stops recording and a message pops up on the screen. iPhone storage is full. And I'm like, oh, really? Like now? Now is when it chooses to do this? Thankfully, it did save what it had recorded. It didn't just throw out the entire thing. But actually, I still have that footage on my phone. I've been focused today on getting this podcast ready to go and then recording this podcast. So I haven't had a chance to go through that footage and upload it. But I will probably put that on my Instagram at some point over this weekend if you're interested in seeing it. Now, about this car, I have another comment on this car before I move on to the rest of what was at this event. If I'm being honest, the Robotaxi would be essentially perfect as a replacement for my wife's 20-year-old Mini Cooper. You guys have heard me talk about this before. My intention has been to probably replace it with the Cybertruck, even though it's the polar opposite of a Mini Cooper in terms of size. But the Cybercab really would be a near perfect replacement for my wife's Mini. She doesn't drive much because she's always worked from home, and now I work from home now too. But she really doesn't drive that much, and the Cybercab is small, which she prefers. She prefers a smaller vehicle, and being a fully autonomous vehicle, it could ferry our daughter to school without us having to drive her, which would be incredibly useful to get that time back and know that she's going to get there and back safely. Now, The almost perfect part, for at least for my family, comes from the fact that there is the quote unquote problem of that all three of us, let alone either dog, we would not all be able to fit in the Robotaxi at once. But I would still buy the car if it were available soon, because we'd have my Model 3 if we needed to all go somewhere. That would be fine. So again, for the limited amount of driving that my wife does, I really think, again, especially since we could put our daughter in it and have her go where she needs to go or wants to go, it would really be super beneficial to my family. And then keeping my Model 3. But the thing is, the timeline, as I talked about earlier, we're talking a minimum of 2 years away, and I do want to emphasize minimum. And so it's her car, her Mini Cooper it's done. It's done now. If it were a year out, I could justify stretching it out. I don't think I can justify hanging onto that car another 2 years, possibly 3, and who knows? There is an uncertainty there, because we're going from, Tesla's on the path for sure. I don't deny that. I see the progress in my own car, but we're talking about going from level 2 supervised driver assistance to level 5 fully autonomous. Can it read all the road signs it needs to and act appropriately the way that currently the system cannot? If you've got like a flashing red light if a light's out, there are things there that the system does not do right now. I don't want to say it can't do, but there are things right now that the system cannot do. Or that it is not doing. So there's still a lot of unanswered questions here, and I just don't think I can personally wait that long to swap out my wife's aging car. And I would say part of my pessimism on the timeline is that they didn't take reservations after the presentation ended. Unless they've done that since I recorded this on Friday night. Yeah, that'd be weird if they suddenly put up a reservation page over the weekend between the time I record this and the time you hear it. But the fact that they didn't start taking reservations for a car that Elon clearly said in the presentation that we as individuals will be able to buy and own, it's a surprise. I think it's the first vehicle product unveiling that they've ever had where you couldn't immediately put down a reservation for that vehicle. And I think I can guess why they chose not to do it. Because they probably didn't want to get a potentially million-plus reservations piled up, thus adding a ton of extra pressure for them to get the vehicle to market. Which, I acknowledge, it's a very good problem of Tesla to have. Do we really want to have 1 million reservations on our books? But it is still a problem that they would have a huge number of reservations on their books. They're still working through that on the Cybertruck. That has definitely been, it's caused a lot of anxiousness, and probably both for us, the customers, and for Tesla internally with those million, 2 million reservations on the Cybertruck. But it's that plus the unanswered questions because this presentation was really light on concrete information. So the timeline and the unanswered questions, it really left me wondering, and I don't want what I'm about to say to come off too pessimistic, because I had a good time. I was so grateful. I want to emphasize that. It is a privilege to go to these events, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have gotten to attend this one. But if I'm putting my Tesla podcaster hat on, and I've slept on it, and now I'm reflecting on this. To me, the big question, or the big kind of conclusion that I was left with is a question. And that question is, why did they do this now? Was it just to try and goose the stock price? Because if so, that didn't work. The stock price was down almost 10% the next day, which is for Friday. So that's where it left off as of me recording this. But why do this now? Because if I'm looking at this with the benefit of 2020 hindsight, I wonder why they didn't wait and do the Model 2.5 unveiling first. Now, I'm on record as saying that they should wait until the last minute possible to do that, and I'm still holding to that. But I'm saying that even with that in mind, the Robotaxi reveal maybe should have still come after the Model 2.5 unveiling. And the reason I say that is because then both products, the 2.5, assuming that they wait and announce it pretty close, as close to market as they can, as close as they can to it being ready to go into production. And then if they had waited, another year or potentially more, but another year from now to do this event, the Robotaxi reveal, well, then that timeline would be much closer and it would feel more real and more tangible. And maybe they would take reservations at that time. So ultimately, I'm kind of left with the feeling that, well, ultimately, not a lot has changed from last week to this week. The Robotaxi, and especially, I think, the Robovan, are still pretty far out on the horizon. Yes, I got a test ride, but again, we have to acknowledge that was on a closed circuit and probably a pretty hard-coded demo lap, a loop there. It wasn't the real world. And I get that it couldn't be because Tesla would need regulatory approval to have done this on real roads. But all that stuff added together, I'm left. It's not that I didn't like the event. It's that I didn't come out of it as excited as I typically do when I come out of other Tesla product unveilings. Coming out of the Cybertruck event, at that moment, I wasn't interested in the Cybertruck, but this was a big, bold swing. They suddenly got piles of reservations, and the entire internet was talking about the Cybertruck, for good or bad. And ultimately, it's turned out to be very, very good. The Model 3 unveiling is, probably still the best unveiling I believe they've ever done, because they offered a ton of detail. They explained what the car was, what it would be capable of, the range, the performance, the engineering of it, how it was going to be super safe. Like they went through everything in that car, and it went into production 16 months later. Now, granted, the first 6-7 months of it, first 5 or 6 months of Model 3 production, you could only get it if you were a Tesla employee. But in less than 2 years from the Model 3 unveiling, regular customers, in fact, far less than 2 years, because after Tesla employees, then they allowed current Tesla owners, meaning they had an S or an X, to buy a Model 3. So Model 3 got real quickly. This just does not feel like it's going to get real that quickly. I hope I'm wrong. And it was a fun event. It was super cool. I'm going to tell you about the rest of the event now. But in terms of the Robotaxi itself, it just feels like my hype level. I knew the Robotaxi existed before this event. Clearly, Elon's talked about it a lot. But I'm not really that much more excited for it now than I was a week ago. So in that sense, the event was a little underwhelming, but still always fun to be there, and I'm glad that Tesla showed off the car, which, by the way, if you read Walter Isaacson's authorized biography of Elon Musk, there is a picture of a wooden mock-up of a Robotaxi. It's the car. Like, the car was effectively leaked by, we now know in hindsight, the car was effectively leaked by Elon Musk's own biographer, which obviously Elon had to sign off because he had to okay that picture. He had to okay that picture going into the book. But if you go back and look at that picture now, you'll see it's like, oh, yep, that's the car. So I got a little bit of a chuckle out of that. But I will say, I do think the car looks cool. I like the look of it. Even though it's not stainless steel, I like the look. I think it's a pretty neat, futuristic looking car. I love the Cybertruck-esque light bar on the front, and I like the light bar on the rear. Like, it's just a clean, sleek, cool-looking little car. So I'm into it from the design perspective. A quick pause right here to remind you that my friends at Accelerate Auto offer a fantastic extended warranty option for your Tesla. If, like me, you're planning on keeping your Tesla past the factory warranty period of 4 years and 50,000 miles, whichever comes first, grab yourself the XCare plan. I am a fan. I have a 3-year, 40,000 mile plan added on to my car, which I've taken advantage of a couple times, fortunately only for little things, but I'm glad to have it just in case. And if it sounds like something you might be interested, know that it does everything that Tesla's own 2-year, 25,000 mile fixed extended warranty option does, which means it's got the $100 deductible and 24/7 roadside assistance. But XCare also, on top of that, offers rental reimbursement and trip interruption coverage, which Tesla does not. So you can get a plan for up to 10 years, up to 125,000 more miles, or somewhere in between. Whatever you want to do, it's all good. And they also have that battery and drivetrain option that you can add on as well. Or it doesn't even have to be an add-on. You could just buy the battery and drivetrain policy for your car and not worry about the rest. If you just want to cover that most expensive component, the XCare plan can do that for you. So if you are interested in that, go check them out. The website is accelerateauto.com/xcare, and I'll spell that out for you. It's also in the episode description. It's XCELERATEAUTO.com/XCARE. And if you do pick up a policy, don't forget to use the discount code LIGHTNING, and that'll get you $100 off your purchase. Again, that discount code LIGHTNING. Thank you so much to my friends at XCare for continuing to offer that. Okay, so Optimus. Let me tell you about Optimus now. They had a bunch of them walking around the event doing party tricks, which is fitting because they were at a party. You could play rock, paper, scissors with them. They had one serving drinks behind a sort of makeshift bar, and they had another handing out cookies, and others were dancing. Now, we didn't really learn, I don't think, anything new about Optimus. I mean, the same price point that Elon's mentioned a number of times before was given again, $20,000 to $30,000. The same end goal of Optimus helping to create a bountiful economy was mentioned. But perhaps the point of having Optimus at this wasn't really to show off anything new, but just to show them off at all in a oh man, I've been I gotta go to bed. A real world setting, there we go, which in fairness was super cool. It really was super cool to just be walking around the event and seeing the Optimus robots also walking around the event, and others, again, serving drinks and handing out cookies. So it was pretty cool because I don't believe they've ever shown them off in a public way like this, where they were mingling amongst non-Tesla employees. I mean, they've posted videos of Optimus's progress, certainly, but seeing them and interacting with them shows how real these things are in terms of being a physical thing that works. Like, it's not being held up by wires anymore. Like, it stands, it walks, it articulates its fingers. It's a real thing. I mean, build-wise, just again, I got really, really close to it. They're pretty darn cool already in terms of the build, and they're only going to get better. They're about 6 feet tall, and they walk pretty well. They walk quite well. I was pretty impressed with it. But again, this is another product where there were no reservations made available. It was mentioned in the presentation, and if I could have put down a reservation on an Optimus, I would have done that. I don't know if I would have gone through with the purchase right when it first comes out. Who knows, but it would have been nice to get a place in line on that. So again, it's not taking the reservation on it. I understand, I think, why Tesla didn't do it. Again, avoiding that good problem that they've had with the Cybertruck. But it just made it feel like it was still pretty far out on the horizon. There really still isn't a firm timeline for Optimus as of yet. Other event activities I want to mention real quick. I mentioned the different quote-unquote neighborhoods in the city. There was a New York area with big tall buildings, and they had where I believe it was the Peterson Auto Museum, because Franz is super tight with them. I believe there were just neat cars from the Peterson scattered about on display. Like a kit from Knight Rider was there, like an actual Trans Am that had all the kit, like presumably an actual car from the show. So kit was there. The Tim Burton 1989 Batmobile was there. That was pretty sick, because I'm of the age, I just turned 44 last month. The Tim Burton Batman movie was my absolute, it was my whole world for quite a while when I was 9 years old. So that, I've seen that car before. I've had the privilege, but it's never not cool to get to see that car. So they had, and then I mentioned some of the Tesla prototypes, the original Prototype X, the Silver Prototype 3, some of the other stuff. It was really, really neat to see that. And then a very cool little activity they had was smacking the Cybertruck's door with a very large, heavy hammer. I of course took advantage of that. My swing is on my Instagram. It probably looks pathetic, but I got to tell you, the hammer really was. It was quite a heavy hammer. In hindsight, I wish I'd kept my hands closer together and taken a bigger kind of baseball swing, but I had one hand higher up, so it was maybe not quite as much leverage as I could have put into it. And the reason that matters at all is because they had it set up where it was like that carnival game where you smack a hammer down onto a thing on the ground, and then the bell, the ball shoots up, and can you hit the bell at the top? Can you hit it hard enough to launch the ball up to hit the bell? Well, the Cybertruck version of that was if you whack the Cybertruck hard enough, the light bar, both front and rear, were calibrated to basically be like force meters, not Jedi force, but actual impact force, where they would fill up. And then they had these sound effects in there to either applaud you if you hit it really hard, or to taunt you, to mock you politely if you didn't really register a big hit. And so, yeah, I did get mocked. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I had a middle of the road hit on the door there relative to all the other event attendees. I don't know, but it was cool because it's a thing where we've seen the Cybertruck get whacked with stuff in videos, but I know on my own Cybertruck, I will not do it because I wouldn't want to leave even the slightest little scratch by doing it. So even though I know it can take it, I'm not going to actively do it on my own truck. So it was nice to be able to just take a free swing with a big ol' hammer at one of Tesla's own trucks. So that was pretty cool. I got to say a very, very, very brief hello to Franz. He was understandably being mobbed by people. Everybody wanted a picture with him. So I patiently waited my turn, just said a quick hello, got a quick picture. That picture's up on my Instagram. But yeah, it was always a pleasure to see him and say a quick hello. I got to meet for the first time in real life Wes Morrill, who I've cited here on the podcast a number of times. He's the lead engineer on the Cybertruck. So it was really cool to get to meet him, say hello to him. And somebody that you have heard here on the podcast, sadly not as an interview yet, but you've heard me play clips of him many times on the podcast, Tesla's VP of Vehicle Engineering, Lars Moravi. I got to meet Lars. It was right when I got out of my Cybercab ride. I popped out and looked to and he was like right there talking to a couple people. So again, I just respectfully, politely waited until there was a appropriate moment. And then I introduced myself, said hello, and he was very kind. He was a very nice guy. So that was really cool, getting to meet Lars, getting to meet Wes, and I want to say as well, getting to meet a number of you. A number of very, very kind listeners came up to me and said hello, told me they enjoy the podcast, which I have to tell you, it's very humbling. It's very humbling, and it really made my night, if I'm being completely honest. Because again, I sit here alone in my office at home with two dogs who could not care less what I'm saying right now. They're both asleep. And I do this, and I do it out of enthusiasm and passion, and I'm so excited about Tesla as a company, and I love their cars, and I do this. But it's still, I know this may sound, I'm not, you may think I'm just trying to be whatever, but I really mean it when I say, like, I don't process that there are people out there that actually listen to this and enjoy it on top of that. So I was really, really very, very humbled by all the number of folks that came up and told me, introduced themselves and wanted a picture or wanted to just say hi and say that they enjoy the podcast. So thank you to all of you. That really made my night. That was really cool. Now, overall, I'll give you my final thoughts here, because this podcast, as expected, was a long one, and that's, I'm sure you expected that coming in as well. I'm not going to do the Ride the Lightning hotline this week. It's just, this is going on for quite a while. I will get to your calls next week. I promise you that. So I'll say, if you have a question, comment, or discussion topic, I'm sure plenty of you have reactions to the Robotaxi and or the Robovan and or Optimus and or something you saw or didn't see at this Robotaxi reveal. Feel free to call in. Just dial in anytime. There are two ways to do it. Either actually dial in and leave a message. The toll-free number is 1-888-989-8752. Or you can use your smartphone's built-in voice recording software, record your question, and then email it to me. My email address is teslapodcast@gmail.com. Either way, I very politely request that you try to limit your call to 90 seconds or less so that I can get to as many people each week as possible. And again, I will get to those phone calls next week. But my overall final thoughts here is, it was a super fun event, a great party. Tesla's gotten pretty darn good at hosting parties, for sure. The Cyber Rodeo, which I wasn't at, but just even from the pictures and everybody I talked to, that sounded like it was phenomenal. You know, the Cybertruck unveiling 5 years ago was a great party, as well as a great product unveiling. That got both. But super fun event, great party. I'm not sure quite how it came across on the live stream at home versus getting to be there. And again, just want to It was a wonderful, wonderful privilege to get to be there, and I do not take that privilege for granted. So super grateful for that. But I don't think the event, again, like, I don't want this to come off too pessimistic, but because of the lack of firm timelines, because of the lack of reservations being opened up, and because the Robotaxi and the Robovan are reliant not just on Tesla getting their technology ready, but reliant on regulators that Tesla has no control over signing off on this stuff as well. The event didn't make the future feel all that much closer than it did last week. Because again, we've all known that Tesla's been building this future and building towards this future. But that's kind of my big takeaway. So in the end, this event didn't quite generate the same level of excitement for me as their other product unveilings have. The Cybertruck and the Model 3 unveiling being the two absolute standouts in that department. In fact, the Model 3, let me talk about that for a second, just as a point of reference, just to kind of back up what I'm saying here. The Model 3 unveiling, I mean, I already covered this, I guess, but it just had all the specs, all the details, a lot of engineering nuggets. They put everything into that presentation. They told us exactly what the car was, what it could do, how much it would cost, what it meant for the transition to sustainable energy, and they told us why that car was awesome. They did a great job on the Model 3 unveiling. The Model Y unveiling, fast forward 3 years, and the Model Y unveiling was more about Tesla's history leading up to that point than it was about doing a deep dive on the Model Y itself. But at the Model Y unveiling in March of 2019, you could put in an actual order with options, your paint color, all that. You could put in an actual order for that car that day, and sure enough, that car went into production exactly 1 year later, in March of 2020. So it was a quick turnaround. The Cybertruck unveiling, again, neck and neck with the Model 3 for me as the best one they've ever done. They shocked the world with this insane idea, but guess what? They sold us on it. Now, a lot of us, I remember talking about this at the time and hearing from so many of you, a lot of us had that initial reaction of hating it, and then over the course of 24 to 48 hours, thinking about it more and how the function dictated the form and the stainless and we all, and it meant a lot of us came around on it and we're like, oh, I love it now. I hated it at first, but now I love it. And that presentation, it told us why the stainless steel was awesome as a means of exterior toughness and longevity, the tougher windows, and yes, even though the legendary steel ball window shattering was part of that, they showed us the air suspension and why that was going to be super cool and functional. Like with the Model 3, Tesla told us what the Cybertruck was, why it was the way it was, why that it was awesome, and how it would help accelerate the transition to sustainable energy, and they took reservations that night. This one, again, just felt a little more abstract, like they were selling the concept of autonomy more than the Robotaxi product, let alone the Robovan itself. Again, they showed two applications as a live tech demo, the Cybercab and the Optimus. So in the overall grand scheme of things, I'm left to wonder, okay, what does the next few years of Tesla look like? If they had also shown this, at this event, if they had also shown a Cybercab but with a steering wheel and pedals and said, well, we're working hard towards our fully autonomous future, but we have this two-seat city car that's fully capable of FSD, right now, we're going to put it into production in 3 months or 6 months, and put your reservation down right now. Guess what? They would have sold like hotcakes right then and there, and I'd have been one of the people that would have bought one. Now, it seems like we will not be getting the Roadster reveal, or should I say re-reveal, this year that Elon had tweeted about back on February 28th. I went back and looked it up. He had said that they hoped to unveil it, or they planned to unveil it, I should say, by the end of the year. And I just can't see how there would be another event in the next 2 months, especially not with the holidays coming up. Because the new Roadster can't just be unveiled on the Tesla website, or even like with a Motor Trend or a Marquez Brownlee, something like that, as much as I love Motor Trend and love Marquez. When Tesla shows off the new Roadster, they have to show it off. They have to blow people away with that SpaceX technology that they've talked up, aka the alleged hovering, aka flying, as well as the 1 second 0 to 60 time. So whenever they're ready for the Roadster re-reveal, hopefully, presumably safe to pencil in for next year, they're probably going to need to have it at either an actual drag strip or maybe even an airstrip with even more runway space than your typical quarter-mile drag strip. Same goes for the Model 2.5 unveiling. I'm on the record, and I said it again in this podcast, that I feel that Tesla should wait and do that unveiling as late in the process as they possibly can until just before they're ready to go into production on it, if that's possible without it leaking. Because if they do it sooner, they risk Osborning the Model 3 and or the Model Y sales. And Tesla's already told us in recent shareholder letters that they are doing everything they can to accelerate the process on that vehicle, such as abandoning the unboxing manufacturing process that they're going to use for Cybercab, and instead using existing technologies, existing manufacturing techniques, and infrastructure. So the Model 2.5, as I've been calling it, it is on its way as quickly as Tesla can make it happen, and thus, I think it's pretty safe to pencil that one in for a 2025 reveal as well. And by the way, just as a side note, I do think that the Model 2.5, well, it's not going to look anything like the Robotaxi because they're being built in completely different ways, and I think the 2.5 is going to be a compact crossover SUV. We just know in the North American market and really the global market, SUVs are the bigger sellers. So that's what I think the Model 2.5 is going to be. If I had to place a wager right now, my bet would be that the Model 2.5 reveal is in the spring of 2025, shortly before production starts, and the Roadster re-reveal is in the fall of 2025, also shortly before production on that car starts, with the 2.5 built at Giga Texas and the new Roadster built in Fremont. But in either case, the Roadster re-reveal and the Model 2.5 reveal, as I was saying, Tesla needs to show a product and give lots of details and have it be something that's genuinely coming soon. That is the common feedback that I'm seeing from this event. From this, people are feeling like they did not get a lot of details. So for the Roadster, give those detailed performance and range specs and that aforementioned demo of the SpaceX package. For the Model 2.5 reveal, we need price, we need range, we need a good look at the interior, we need some engineering specs on what makes it so good despite it costing so little. They need to basically do the Model 3 event for the Model 2.5, and the Roadster re-reveal is going to have to be its own insane thing. That's going to have to be a wild, whole other ball of wax. But anyway, before I wrap up here, I wanted to, I had my own thoughts on this event, and I purposely avoided going online to look at other people's reactions until after I'd made all my notes. I wanted to just have my reaction without it being influenced or colored by anybody else's thoughts as much as I could. So after I got the podcast notes together, or at least my initial skeleton of them from my hotel room this morning before I flew back home, I posted this week's Patreon poll this morning, Friday morning, far later in the week than I usually do. But I wanted to get your immediate reactions, your gut reactions to the Robotaxi reveal. And I have to say, I am very, very grateful that so many of you stopped by patreon.com/Tesla podcast and voted. Because even though, as of me reading you the results here, the poll has only been up for, actually, barely 12 hours, maybe 13 hours, something like that. There's a ton of responses here. So thank you to everybody that stopped by and voted. And it was a simple poll question. What would you grade the Robotaxi event using the common United States school grading scale of A, B, C, D, F, A being the best, F being failing? 38% of you gave it a B. 30% of you gave it a C. 14% of you gave it a D. 13% of you gave it an A. And just 4% of you gave it an F. And there are so many great, insightful comments on the poll this week that I'm already going so long, I don't even want to get into these because there's just so many good, just very, very insight. There's actually really a great discussion happening here on the Patreon poll. Because, again, the poll is open to anybody. You don't have to be backing me on Patreon. Just swing on by, vote, drop a comment if you want. Thank you to everybody that did. And yeah, I mean, a B, I would be, I don't know if I would go B or C. That would be, I'd have to think on that longer. It's funny, I didn't even think about, like, how would I respond to my own poll on this one. I was just so focused on trying to get all my detailed thoughts into the notes for the podcast this week, but I would definitely be in the B or C group. It was not an A for me. It certainly wasn't an F. It wasn't a D. I would be in the B or C group. I'm not quite sure which, but so again, thank you to all of you that took the time to vote in that one. And most weeks, the Patreon poll question goes up, again, totally for free for anybody on Tuesday nights. That's when you can swing on by and look for it. Okay, before I go this week, I wanted to tell you about, well, an entertainment recommendation. I was in La La Land. I was down in LA. And on the flight down there, I finally finished. I watched the last episode on the plane of a show on Netflix that is absolutely not family friendly, so I'll just get that out of the way up front. But Terminator Zero. I hope I haven't mentioned this one already. If I have, I apologize. But Terminator Zero, it's an anime done out of it's Japanese animation, and Skydance was involved too. Whoever wrote it, like it's just every aspect of it's really good. Like I know the last certainly at least 2, if not 3 Terminator movies have not been what I would call particularly great. In fact, varying degrees of not great at all. But this anime was really good. It was a really cool take on Terminator. So if that's of interest to you, you can check that out on Netflix. Now for your Tesla Pro Tip of the Week. It's our friend Jonathan from Atlanta. I say friend because Jonathan's called in plenty of times over the months and years, and he's got a pro tip to share with us that unfortunately is on the back of these horrific natural disasters, these hurricanes that have hit the southeastern U.S. But Jonathan, with a pro tip that can hopefully be of use to people, whether hopefully not during a natural disaster, but just useful in some context. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Hey, Ryan. Thanks for taking my call. It's Jonathan again from Atlanta. Just wanted to give out a pro tip that we used recently with the hurricane that just came through Atlanta and, of course, devastated North Carolina. So we lost power at our house for a number of hours at night, and the house was getting pretty warm. So my daughter and I decided we were going to go ahead and try to see if the superchargers were available nearby, and sure enough, they had power. So we charged up both of our cars, and instead of sleeping in a warm house, my three daughters, and me and my wife, my three daughters slept in my daughter's Model 3 with the AC, obviously the camp mode, and then my wife and I at least started the night in my Model Y in camp mode, and we had AC, and we were cool, and it was spectacular. I mean, it's just, would you have ever believed we could be living like that, 15 years ago? This is awesome. So, yeah, just a kind of a pro tip, if you lose power at night and your house is warming up, put it in camp mode in the garage. That's all I'm saying.
Jonathan, hello, and I'm sorry that this pro tip was born out of such an unfortunate situation with your loss of power, and again, certainly my condolences go out to everyone affected by these two devastating hurricanes. But, you made the best of it. You're able to laugh about it now. And yeah, you made the lemonade out of lemons there. Your car was the most comfortable place in this circumstance, and I'm genuinely glad that it helped your family get a restful night's sleep. Thank you so much for calling in. And if anybody else out there has a good pro tip of the week that you'd like to share with me and your fellow Tesla owners and enthusiasts, I would welcome and encourage you to call in and share it. I gave you the instructions, the two call-in methods, and the instructions for each of those a little earlier in the podcast, so refer back to that, and I would love to hear your pro tip of the week so that I can add to my Tesla knowledge base and hopefully help you add to yours as well. Before I go, I want to mention some friends of Ride the Lightning that can hopefully be of use to you. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, maybe next month. Keep them in mind, such as abstractocean.com. They make a million awesome aftermarket Tesla accessories for all 5 Teslas that are currently in production. Yes, S3XY and Cybertruck as well. Check them out at abstractocean.com. One of the most popular items they have is that 4th generation tempered glass screen protector. Protect your center screen from scratches, from damage. It's a very important component in your car. You do all of your key interactions through that screen. So I definitely recommend that tempered glass screen protector. It uses aluminosilicate glass, same stuff Corning uses for Gorilla Glass. It also has antimicrobial coating. Check it out along with all the other products. A lot of cool lighting products. I've mentioned the puddle lights. They have the exact same puddle lights that Tesla has, but theirs are $20 cheaper. So might as well get them from Abstract Ocean, especially when I can offer you an Abstract Ocean discount, and I don't have a discount for shop.tesla.com. So that discount code is good for 15% off of your first order, and the coupon code is RTL Podcast, all one word, no spaces in that. Enter that coupon code at checkout after you've piled everything that you like into your online shopping cart at abstractocean.com. How about the Snap Plate and the newer Snap Plate Plus available for S3XY and yes, Cybertruck now as well. This is the front license plate bracket that will snap on and off easily with the included tools, but it is paint safe, grill safe, radiator safe, autopilot safe. It's not going to get in the way of anything at all, really. Anything at all. Except it'll get in the way of a citation from law enforcement. That's what it's designed to get in the way of. So it's going to keep you from getting a ticket. When you want to take it off, it's easy enough to take off, and it won't leave any unsightly hardware or anything else behind. Make those fix-it tickets go away if, like me, you live in a state that requires a front license plate, but you prefer not to have one on. This is a nice minimal look. It's not bulky. It's not, it's the one to go with if you gotta do a front license plate. Or, of course, if you want to do one, I still recommend the Snap Plate or the stronger Snap Plate Plus. The stronger meaning it is strength optimized with hardened features for maximum strength. The regular one is safety optimized with breakaway features to sacrifice itself in a worst case scenario, like a parking accident or a car wash. Both are made from recycled, made in the USA plastics with stainless steel reinforcements. Get yours at everyamp.com/RTL. And thank you to the Every Amp folks for recently, I guess maybe not that recently now, continuing to offer my listeners a discount on the Snap Plate. So go to everyamp.com/RTL, and then whatever's in your cart, when you check out, use the coupon code RTL for a discount. Immaculate Reflections takes such good care of cars that we care about. I cannot speak highly enough about Jeff McGovern, the owner and proprietor at Immaculate Reflections. I can't speak high enough of him as a detailer, and more importantly, as a human being. This is a good guy who does incredible work on cars. He is a car guy. He cares a lot about cars. He is a fairly new member of the Tesla family. He's admired from afar for a long time. He would always text me like he's looking at this. What about this used P85D Model S? What about this Model 3? And he ended up buying himself a brand new Model Y. I guess that was end of last year, I think he got it. So he's one of us now. But he takes care of all kinds of cool cars, not just Teslas, but anything that you might have that's in your garage that you love, whether it's a Tesla or something else. I promise you, if you're in or going to be in the greater San Francisco Bay Area, you would do yourself a service by bringing that vehicle to Immaculate Reflections, whether it's for PPF, paint protection film, on some or all of the car, whether it's for the paint correction to get your paint finish looking as good as it possibly can, and or whether it's for ceramic coating so that you don't have to wax your car for the next 3 to 5 plus years, because ceramic coating does that job on a much longer time horizon. Check them out. The website is irdetailing.com, and you can reach out through there to get in touch with Jeff. And if you are interested in booking in a detailing service with him, make sure to mention that you're a Ride the Lightning listener, and Jeff will very, very kindly extend you the Ride the Lightning listener discount. I mentioned the Patreon a little earlier in the podcast, but I want to take one more minute here. I would be so humbled and grateful if you would consider a pledge on Patreon. This podcast is free. It has always been free. It will always be free, but it's a lot every week. I mean, this week it was, again, an extreme privilege to get to go down to LA, but it also cost me quite a lot of money out of pocket to do it, and it was a super quick turnaround on the podcast. So if you enjoyed this episode, you enjoyed this Robotaxi analysis and recap, and hopefully you've enjoyed all the other episodes you've listened to, I really would, seriously, I would just be grateful if at some point, maybe it's not today, if today's a bad day, bad week, bad month, hey, I get it, I get it. But maybe at some point you will consider supporting the podcast on Patreon. Those pledge tiers start at just $5 a month. And for $5 a month, you'll get not only early access to each week's episode, you'll get ad-free episodes as well, which means you won't hear this part anymore. So check it out at patreon.com/Tesla podcast. If you step up to that most popular tier, the $10 a month tier, then you get the ad-free, the early access, and all of those lightning round mini episodes that I have done and will do on Patreon. I'll also mention the referral program. It has returned. You heard me talk at the top of the show about these 2 big new incentives. So, well, in one case, one new and one continuing incentive, the continuing one being FSD transfer, and then the new one being 0% financing. Crazy stuff. So if you're a first-time Tesla owner, a first-time Tesla buyer, you can not only take advantage of that 0% financing for up to 72 months that Tesla's offering, but if you order using my referral link, which I'll give you in a second, you get $1,000 off that car as well. So that's hopefully pretty sweet. So the way to do that is to type my referral link into a web browser, be it on your desktop or any mobile device, just wherever you want to order from. Type in ts.la/Ryan73014. Choose which Tesla you want to order. It's you can get a Cybertruck. It's not applicable, but S3XY, it'll work. Choose which car you want. Configure that car however you want it. Submit the order, and then that $1,000 discount will be applied. And I just have to politely remind you, the Tesla made it very clear on the terms and conditions page, you must order through the referral link. They will not retroactively go back and apply it if you forget. So you got to order through the referral link. And if mine can be of use to you, please feel free to use it. I'm on X as well as Instagram. Same username on both. That username is DMC_Ryan. You can email me anytime about Tesla-related stuff at teslapodcast@gmail.com. Let me say hello to and thank the top-tier Patreon backers before I go. I'm going to start with the Maximum Plaid tier, who, by the way, tomorrow, as I record this, Saturday, so the 12th here, the monthly Patreon Zoom Hangout is happening, strategically scheduled for this so that we could all talk about the Robotaxi event that just happened. I can't wait for this call with those of you that are going to be able to attend. I can't wait to hear what all of you thought of the event. So looking forward to that. The Maximum Plaid backers are invited to this every single month or higher. Maximum Plaid and Roadster in Space are invited every single month. So that if that is of interest to you, if you want to join us for our monthly chats, I'd love to have you. So that's the Maximum Plaid tier. But for right now, I want to say hello and thank you to the newest Maximum Plaid tier backer, Jerry Slinger. Jerry, thank you so much for your very generous and kind support. And I'll say thank you as well to the other Maximum Plaid tier backers, Jonathan Wales, Cameron Clark, Daniel Grummer, Seth Capello, Nick and Tony, the Galpin family, Ryan from New York City, Darren Nickel, Kaz Barnes, Brett Libano, Patrick Wisniewski, Gil Cabrera, Todd Badger, Joe Edgel, Kevin Yank, the Tesla Owners Club of San Joaquin Valley, Will Stedman, Justin Perez, Jeremy Harris, Chris Beach, Tom Mills, Corey O'Donnell, Aaron, John Cody. John was one of the people I ran into at the event this week. Good to see you. Joel Sapp, Paul Casarino, Richard Corley, Chris Osborne, KB, Adam Lavoie, Jason Chalukas, Travis Krenzel, Bruce Otterstein, Tom Behan, Josh Pennington, John from Cream Ridge, New Jersey, Dustin Hart, Derek Finley, Charles Clement, Adam Christie, Damon Klein, and Jeff Brown. Next up, the Roadster in Space tier backers. Big shout out and thank you to Pete White, Lyle Austin, Steve Radspinner, Fernando Cordero, Lawton from Chicago, Sean Neidig, Neil Weaver, Jackson Wallace, Rolf and Jennifer Evers, Howard Anthony Smith, Victoria Iacovetto, Tesla Hitchhiker 42, Carol Weston, Robert from near Philly, Kristen Rumble, American Home Contractors, GetAmber.com, Doug Carey, Rav, and Michael Gallo. And finally, one more thank you to the grandfathered in plaid level supporters. Thank you so much to George Cassiopo, Logan Willis, Peter Chalet, Eric Randolph, Dory and Steve Guberman, the Tesla Owners Club of Taiwan, Ron Lee, Charlie Gillespie, Jeff Angwin, Chase Cabanillas, the Lydia family, Aaron Altschul, Jared Brown, Jerome Strack, Jamie Dalton, Mike and Barbara from Louisville, Matt Nixon, the Tesla Owners Club of Wisconsin, Ish, not Elon Musk, in quotes, Peter, and the Bear Boys of Colorado. And as expected, this was a pretty long episode of Ride the Lightning, your Tesla unofficial podcast. This was episode 480. It is much later than it usually is. I mean, I knew it was going to be like this today, and that's okay. It was a sprint. It's a long one. I'm going to try to get this up while it's still technically Friday. It is after 11 p.m. here, and I've still got to edit this and just clean it up, just tighten it up, and then get it uploaded and ready to go for all of you. So with that, my voice is going too. I gotta get out of here and get to bed and get some water. I'll probably do those things in the different order than what I just said, though. I think I'll get the water first. That might be a better idea. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening to this extra long episode of Ride the Lightning. Remember, the earnings call is coming up in 2 episodes from now. So, not next week's show, but the week after. So, the fun times just keep right on rolling along. I hope some of you are able to take advantage of that 0% financing. Maybe take advantage of that FSD transfer that's still rolling. So, love it. Had a great time this week. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Happy electric motoring, and I'll see you next week.
Elon Musk, people don't like Elon Musk. The guy founded PayPal and Tesla, and people are like, yeah, but he's a troll and a bad dad. I'm like, so was mine. He did nothing to fight climate change. Also, have you been in a Tesla? Have you been in a Tesla? My buddy let me drive his Tesla. I laughed out loud at how fast it went. Been clinically depressed my entire life, on dozens of medications, in a Tesla for 13 seconds, cured forever.
I mean, I think a Tesla is the most fun thing you could possibly buy ever. That's what it's meant to be. Our goal is to make it's not exactly a car. It's actually a thing to maximize enjoyment. It's maximum fun.